In a shocking turn of events, new footage of drug cartels brutally fighting against patrol border agents has gone viral. This viral footage shows an intense gun battle and unprecedented levels of violence just miles away from the US-Mexico border, exposing the alarming tactics cartels are using to assert their dominance. Let's explore the shocking details behind the viral footage, the strategies cartels are deploying, the challenges border agents face, and the implications for border security. The shocking footage of cartel clash. A horrifying new footage of escalating violence along the US-Mexico border has gone viral. Gunfire erupts in rapid bursts as heavily armed men, using military-grade weapons, clash near the Rio Bravo, Tamaulipas. This shocking footage, captured by a Texas Department of Public Safety (DPS) surveillance plane, has exposed a new layer of the escalating violence that drug cartels wage not only against each other, but also against US border agents. What makes this footage stand out is its rare, real-time depiction of the violent struggle for dominance in one of the most dangerous border regions. The video begins with stark images of combatants moving strategically through the area, their weapons clearly visible even in the grainy thermal display. One scene shows an explosive device being thrown from a moving vehicle, lighting up the night and underscoring the dangerous tactics employed by these criminal factions. Another clip captures gunfire erupting from a truck, which shows how these groups operate with impunity. This is not an isolated incident, but a vivid illustration of the dangers that US border agents face daily. The footage shows factions of the Gulf Cartel, specifically the Scorpions and the Metros, engaged in a fierce battle for dominance. These rival groups have long been vying for control over the lucrative smuggling routes near Rio Bravo, a small municipality in the Mexican state of Tamaulipas, located just a mile away from the US-Mexico border. The Texas DPS has confirmed that the clash occurred across the Rio Grande near Donna, Texas, an area notorious for drug and human smuggling. The proximity of the fighting to US soil emphasizes the ever-present risk to border patrol agents and civilians alike. Rio Bravo is not just another border town, it is a strategic stronghold in the smuggling operations of Mexican drug cartels. Its location, nestled along the Rio Grande, provides easy access to US territory, making it a focal point for criminal activity. This specific area has gained infamy as one of the most dangerous regions along the border, with cartel violence often spilling over into civilian life. The Gulf Cartel, which controls much of the territory near Rio Bravo, has been plagued by internal divisions. The Scorpions and the Metros, both offshoots of this powerful criminal organization, are locked in a bitter struggle for supremacy. The recent footage illustrates just how far these groups are willing to go to assert dominance, deploying military-style weapons and tactics in a bid to control smuggling routes. According to Texas DPS Lieutenant Christopher Olivares, such battles have occurred in the region before, but this is one of the few times it has been captured on video. They don't use typical firearms or rifles. They're using military-type weapons, he explained. The scale of violence underscores the high stakes involved in controlling these routes, which serve as lifelines for drug trafficking and human smuggling operations. While the footage primarily showcases inter-cartel violence, it also highlights the growing tensions between these criminal organizations and US Border Patrol agents. There are several factors that contribute to these clashes. The Rio Bravo region's proximity to the border makes it a prime location for cartels to transport illicit goods into the United States. With billions of dollars at stake, these groups are highly protective of their smuggling routes. Any perceived threat to their operations, whether from rival factions or law enforcement, often leads to violent confrontations. The narrow separation between Rio Bravo and US border towns like Donna, Texas, means that cartel activities frequently encroach on American soil. This proximity not only endangers border agents, but also exposes civilians to the risk of collateral damage. Over the past few years, US Border Patrol agencies have ramped up their enforcement efforts, deploying advanced surveillance technology and additional manpower to curb illegal crossings. This heightened vigilance has disrupted cartel operations, provoking retaliatory measures. In some cases, cartel members deliberately engage border agents in firefights to intimidate them and assert their dominance. Cartels have evolved to become militarized organizations equipped with advanced weaponry and vehicles. This militarization enables them to counter law enforcement efforts more aggressively, turning border regions into de facto war zones. Lieutenant Olivares pointed out that although gun battles have always been part of the border's harsh reality, the intensity has reached unprecedented levels. There's always been cartels, there's always been gun battles, he stated. It's increasingly more intense now because you have cartels fighting each other for control. This intensity stems from several factors. First, the profitability of smuggling has skyrocketed, driven by increasing demand for drugs and illegal crossings. Second, the Gulf Cartel's fractured leadership has led to infighting, as different factions seek to assert their dominance over strategic territories like Rio Bravo. Lastly, the cartel's access to advanced weaponry has fundamentally changed the dynamics of these confrontations. No longer limited to handguns or rifles, these groups now employ weapons more commonly seen on battlefields, including high-powered rifles and explosives. This arms race among cartels has turned border zones into de facto war zones, where law enforcement struggles to keep up. The shocking footage of the cartel clash offers a raw glimpse into the escalating conflict at the US-Mexico border, but the chaos caught on camera is only part of the story. To truly understand the magnitude of the threat, we need to go beyond the surface. What tactics are these cartels using to outmaneuver law enforcement, and how have they managed to expand their influence despite heightened security measures? Let's take an inside look at the strategies and advanced techniques driving these violent confrontations. Inside, look at the cartel tactics. Drug cartels are notorious for their creativity in smuggling operations. Over the years, they have refined methods to evade law enforcement, often leveraging cutting-edge technology and meticulous planning. Imagine a hidden world beneath the surface, elaborate industrial-grade passages that defy detection and redefine the boundaries of smuggling. One of the most glaring examples of cartel ingenuity is the smuggling tunnel discovered in Arizona, deemed the longest ever by US authorities. Unveiled in January 2020, this tunnel stretched an astonishing 4,309 feet, connecting an industrial area in Tijuana, Mexico to San Diego, California. Built with unparalleled sophistication and at an average depth of 70 feet, it featured a lift, rail tracks, drainage systems, ventilation, and even high-voltage electrical wiring. These features demonstrate the lengths cartels are willing to go to bypass traditional border security measures. Authorities were stunned by the sheer sophistication, estimating that such a project would have taken years to construct, with substantial funding and technical expertise. While no drugs or arrests were immediately linked to this discovery, its design strongly pointed to the infamous Sinaloa cartel. Known for its extensive tunneling operations under the leadership of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the cartel has a storied history of using underground routes to smuggle massive quantities of drugs, weapons, and money. The US-Mexico border is a hotbed of tunneling activity, with dozens of smuggling tunnels discovered over the past 2 decades. Each tunnel tells a story of relentless effort and strategic planning. Some are crude and hastily constructed, while others are architectural marvels, rivaling legitimate infrastructure projects. The tunnels often originate in seemingly innocuous locations, such as homes, warehouses, or businesses, masking their true purpose. On the US side, they emerge in industrial parks or near desolate border zones, exploiting areas with lower surveillance. Once operational, these tunnels facilitate the movement of vast quantities of illegal goods, primarily drugs like cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine. By bypassing traditional checkpoints, cartels minimize the risks associated with trafficking by road or air, ensuring that their lucrative operations remain undisturbed. The Sinaloa cartel has earned a notorious reputation as the pioneer of drug smuggling tunnels. El Chapo, its former leader, elevated tunneling to an art form, with some of his most notable escapes and trafficking successes linked to these underground passages. One of the most dramatic examples was El Chapo's escape from Altiplano prison in 2015. A mile-long tunnel was dug directly into his cell, complete with lighting, ventilation, and a motorcycle on rails to whisk him to freedom. This audacious escape underscored the cartel's resources and their willingness to push the limits of what's possible underground. Furthermore, in Tamaulipas, the Gulf Cartel has employed bunkers and underground hideouts to evade detection and stage surprise attacks. Similarly, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG, has been known to construct trenches and other defensive structures to fortify their positions during clashes with rivals and authorities. The escalation of cartel activities has further transformed them from criminal organizations into quasi-military forces. Over the years, these cartels have embraced military-grade weaponry, armored vehicles, and even trained combatants to strengthen their operations. The weaponry includes rocket-propelled grenades, RPGs, 50-caliber rifles, and anti-personnel mines. The availability of military-grade weapons plays a pivotal role in the cartel's operations. Many of these arms are sourced through 3 primary avenues: straw purchases in the US, looted Central American military armories, and corrupt officials within Mexico itself. Cartels like the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG, and remnants of the Los Zetas have gone a step further, employing improvised armored fighting vehicles, IAFVs, colloquially known as narco tanks. These makeshift war machines, equipped with reinforced armor and mounted weaponry, provide protection and mobility during firefights. Foot soldiers are often clad in body armor, combat harnesses, and armed with assault rifles, portraying an image more akin to a military brigade than a criminal group. The construction of these vehicles is strategic, with workshops dedicated to assembling them, particularly in regions like Michoacan. The CJNG's use of IAFVs in battles with rival groups and government forces underscores their tactical evolution. While these vehicles are primarily symbolic of cartel power, they also serve practical purposes, enabling swift and secure transport in contested territories. The cartel's willingness to directly confront law enforcement marks a dangerous escalation. Tactics like vehicle blockades, ambushes, and targeted attacks on patrol checkpoints have become increasingly common. These confrontations serve dual purposes. They assert territorial dominance and send a clear message of defiance to both authorities and rival cartels. Another concerning development is the use of improvised explosive devices, IEDs. While these have been sporadic, their presence highlights the cartel's willingness to adopt tactics traditionally associated with insurgencies. These explosives are often used to target vehicles or patrol checkpoints, inflicting significant casualties and creating a climate of fear. Cartels also employ psychological tactics to reinforce their power. Videos showcasing their heavily armed units and propaganda materials, such as banners and social media posts, are designed to project an image of invincibility. For example, the CJNG's video shows uniformed troops with military weapons and armored vehicles as a display of power. From constructing elaborate smuggling tunnels to deploying militarized units and leveraging propaganda, these groups operate with a level of sophistication that challenges traditional law enforcement methods. But how are Border Patrol agents rising to meet this evolving threat? With lives on the line and national security at stake, their response demands courage, innovation, and resilience. Let's explore how these agents are adapting their strategies and leveraging resources to confront this escalating danger head-on. Border Patrol agents' response to the threat. Border Patrol agents face immense challenges as they strive to maintain the security of the United States borders. These challenges are amplified by the increasing brazenness of cartels, violent encounters, and the inherent dangers of their work. To ensure that agents are prepared for the ever-evolving threats, the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, and associated agencies have implemented rigorous training programs. These trainings focus on situational awareness, rapid response, and tactical maneuvers that could mean the difference between life and death in volatile situations. These simulations mimic real-world conditions, enabling agents to practice under pressure and develop strategies to counter cartel tactics. The risks faced by Border Patrol agents are not theoretical, they are lived realities. In Texas, an agent on night patrol was ambushed, illustrating the severe dangers these individuals confront daily. The agent was targeted in a remote area, highlighting the vulnerability of patrols operating along isolated stretches of the border. Such incidents underscore the high stakes of border security operations, where every decision can have life-threatening consequences. This constant threat requires agents to maintain not only physical readiness, but also mental resilience as they navigate an environment fraught with unpredictability and violence. In response to the escalating threats posed by cartels, the U.S. government has rolled out significant initiatives to enhance the capacity and safety of Border Patrol forces. Under the Biden-Harris administration, DHS has surged resources to the southwest border, adding personnel, transportation, medical support, and infrastructure. An additional 600 agents have joined the ranks, and 500 more have been reassigned to frontline security roles. This enhanced manpower is complemented by advanced technological systems and intelligence-sharing initiatives aimed at preempting and countering cartel operations. The dangers from cartels have reached unprecedented levels. Recent intelligence reveals that the Sinaloa cartel, amidst an internal power struggle, has sanctioned direct attacks on U.S. law enforcement, including Border Patrol agents. This represents a stark departure from the cartel's historical reluctance to confront U.S. authorities head-on. The situation escalated following the arrest of two high-ranking cartel members, sparking a violent succession battle within the organization. As a result, the cartel's younger factions have adopted more aggressive tactics, emboldened by access to advanced weaponry and a growing disregard for consequences. The violence is not confined to Mexico. In Eagle Pass, Texas, contractors reported being fired upon through the border fence, an alarming indicator of the spillover of cartel brutality into U.S. territory. This incident, along with others, has prompted heightened alerts for Border Patrol agents in areas such as the El Paso sector. Agents have been instructed to exercise extreme caution when approaching suspected cartel operatives, given the increasing likelihood of armed confrontations. Adding to the complexity of border security is the involvement of heavily armed cartel operatives equipped with automatic rifles and armor-piercing ammunition. These individuals often scout border areas to facilitate smuggling operations, including drugs, weapons, and human trafficking. The cartel's operational control over significant stretches of the border poses a formidable challenge to law enforcement agencies. In a notable incident, two cartel members were apprehended in Starr County, Texas, with rifles and armor-piercing rounds, underscoring the advanced militarization of these groups. To combat these threats, Texas has intensified its own border security efforts through Operation Lone Star, a multi-agency initiative involving the Texas Department of Public Safety, DPS, and the National Guard. This operation has led to the apprehension of over 414,000 illegal immigrants and more than 33,000 criminal arrests, including the seizure of 426 million lethal doses of fentanyl. High-speed vehicle pursuits involving human smugglers have become a daily occurrence, highlighting the recklessness and desperation of those attempting to evade capture. These pursuits often endanger public safety, as smugglers drive on the wrong side of roads or crash through fences in their attempts to escape. While the federal and state governments work to address these challenges, the role of technology and intelligence cannot be overstated. The establishment of a new intelligence unit by DHS aims to provide early warnings about migrant movements and cartel activities. This initiative is part of a broader strategy to disrupt transnational criminal organizations and human smuggling networks. Despite these efforts, the risks to Border Patrol agents remain high. The murder of Agent Brian Terry in 2010 serves as a stark reminder of the sacrifices made by those on the front lines. Terry was killed in a gunfight with a cartel RIP crew, a group that preyed on drug traffickers along the border. The incident drew national attention, particularly due to its connection to the controversial Fast and Furious operation, which sought to trace weapons trafficked to cartels but faced significant setbacks. Terry's death underscored the perilous nature of border security and the ever-present danger posed by heavily armed criminal groups. The threats faced by Border Patrol agents are not confined to direct confrontations with cartels. The broader geopolitical and social dynamics, including misinformation campaigns by smugglers and the exploitation of vulnerable migrants, add layers of complexity to their mission. Agents navigate these challenges with a combination of vigilance, training, and collaboration with various stakeholders. While border agents on the ground showcase incredible resilience and resourcefulness, the scale and sophistication of cartel operations demand action at the highest levels of leadership. This is where President-elect Donald Trump's bold and controversial policies, particularly dismantling cartel operations with military precision, come into focus. Now let's explore how Trump's bold proposals could reshape the fight against cartels and the future of America's border security. What's next for border security? Trump's aggressive strategy against drug cartels. Donald Trump's return to the White House signals the launch of an aggressive, multifaceted strategy against Mexican drug cartels, focusing on securing the U.S.-Mexico border, eradicating cartel influence, and reshaping immigration policy. The president-elect has appointed key figures to execute his vision, including former ICE acting director Tom Homan as border czar, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem as Secretary of Homeland Security, and Stephen Miller as Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy. These appointments reflect a no-tolerance stance aimed at bolstering national security and disrupting the activities of drug cartels. Homan has already issued a direct warning to criminal syndicates, pledging decisive action to dismantle their operations. Trump's vision for border security and the fight against drug cartels was a cornerstone of his successful campaign. His rhetoric, accusing the Biden administration of leaving the border wide open to cartels, resonated with voters and galvanized bipartisan support for stricter immigration controls. With the Republican Party now in control of the presidency and both chambers of Congress, Trump is well positioned to push through his ambitious plans. Central to Trump's strategy is the militarization of the border and beyond. He has proposed deploying thousands of troops, currently stationed overseas, to the southern border, utilizing special forces and cyber warfare to cripple cartel leadership and infrastructure. This approach includes invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, which grants sweeping powers to detain, deport, and restrict individuals deemed threats during times of war. Trump has also hinted at naval embargoes and other covert operations to cut off the cartel's financial networks and sever their access to international markets. Trump's strategy builds upon the Republican Party's increasing embrace of military solutions to the drug crisis. By classifying cartels as terrorist organizations, his administration would gain the authority to launch military interventions without the consent of the Mexican government. This bold move echoes previous Republican proposals for authorizing the use of military force against cartels, akin to past congressional resolutions for conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. Trump's rhetoric is clear. The U.S. will take the fight directly to the cartels, disrupting their operations with the same intensity reserved for foreign terrorist organizations. The militarized approach is not without controversy. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has denounced these plans, highlighting the historical tensions between the two nations and warning of the economic and diplomatic fallout. Mexico's resistance to U.S. military presence on its soil underscores the challenges Trump's administration may face in implementing this strategy. Critics argue that unilateral military actions could strain U.S.-Mexico relations, potentially disrupting trade and cooperation on broader issues like migration management and criminal extraditions. The domestic aspect of Trump's strategy is equally assertive. The president-elect has vowed to reinstate and expand his previous immigration policies, initiating mass deportations under an operation dubbed Aurora. This initiative aims to remove millions of undocumented migrants, targeting criminal networks, while also impacting families and communities nationwide. Trump has pledged to begin these actions on his first day in office, a promise that has stirred both support and apprehension. Immigration advocacy groups estimate that nearly 20 million people could face deportation or family separation under this plan. Operation Aurora draws on historical precedents, such as the controversial Operation Wetback of 1954, but with the added power of modern legal frameworks like the Alien Enemies Act. Trump has emphasized that this mass deportation effort is critical to curbing crime and dismantling migrant criminal networks operating in the U.S. However, critics warn of the potential for widespread human rights violations, family separations, and disruptions to communities, especially those with large immigrant populations. Beyond deportations, Trump plans to overhaul existing immigration policies, including canceling humanitarian parole programs and revoking temporary protected status (TPS) for individuals displaced by crises in their home countries. The Trump administration is expected to expand detention facilities and intensify workplace raids, targeting both recent arrivals and long-term undocumented residents. This approach aims to deter illegal immigration and bolster enforcement, but could also exacerbate tensions with immigrant advocacy groups and blue state governments that may resist federal directives. Trump's narrative paints a stark picture of the current border situation, claiming that inadequate security measures have allowed cartels to smuggle large quantities of illegal drugs, particularly fentanyl, into the U.S. The fentanyl crisis, linked to over two-thirds of the nearly 110,000 overdose deaths in the U.S. last year, has intensified calls for action. Trump's strategy portrays the cartels as not only a criminal threat, but a national security concern, warranting the same level of response as traditional acts of terrorism. To further this narrative, Trump has promised to impose the death penalty for drug traffickers and enhance surveillance and physical barriers along the border. His administration views these measures as essential to addressing what he describes as an invasion of criminals and gang members exploiting the border's vulnerabilities. The focus on fentanyl, described by some Republicans as a weapon of mass destruction, underscores the administration's urgency in tackling the crisis. While Trump's plans have garnered support within his party, they have also sparked significant debate. Analysts and former officials, including Trump's own ambassador to Mexico, have warned against the potential pitfalls of a militarized approach. Critics argue that military interventions could escalate violence, destabilize regions, and create new challenges, such as refugee crises and retaliatory actions from cartels. Domestic critics also highlight the ethical and logistical issues surrounding mass deportations, including the risk of targeting vulnerable populations and straining detention resources. Despite these challenges, Trump's appointments of hardline officials signal his administration's seriousness in pursuing these policies. Tom Homan, known for his tough stance on immigration enforcement during Trump's first term, is expected to lead efforts to streamline deportations and secure the border. Stephen Miller's return as an architect of restrictive immigration policies and Kristi Noem's leadership at Homeland Security further cement the administration's commitment to an aggressive agenda. As Trump prepares to take office, his vision for border security security and the fight against drug cartels marks a defining moment in U.S. policy. By combining military force, cyber capabilities, and stringent immigration measures, his administration aims to dismantle the cartel's operations and restore what he describes as law and order at the border. The ongoing battle between drug cartels and Border Patrol agents paints a stark picture of the challenges faced in safeguarding the border. From shocking footage to complex cartel tactics and the bold strategies proposed to combat them, this is a crisis that demands attention and action. The stakes are high, not just for those on the front lines, but for the broader implications on national security and policy. For more in-depth analysis and stories about the evolving dynamics at the border, click on the card now and continue exploring this critical issue.